Hey guys, it's Lane with Tim's Nation. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the DeathWatch I'm bringing tonight. I know I've been playing DeathWatch a lot lately, but this is actually a very different list. It's some different units, different kill teams. I'm not running the Proteus kill team today. I brought some Gladiator Lancers. I just picked up a couple of those recently, got them painted up. I'm using those now. So this is actually a list that I took to an RTT, a little 3-round tournament at North Coast Games here. This past weekend, run by Jason at North Coast Games. Had a great time. 15 people showed up. Did really well. I went 3-0, undefeated. It did end up in second place because friend of the channel, Josh, won the thing because he had a perfect 300 score. Got 100 points in all 3 of his games. There's no way I could score that well. So Josh got in first place. I did go 3-0 though, and I got second place. So the list did really well. So I'm going to go through it and I'm going to show you how it works here today, obviously. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about what things I'm going to change now that we know in the future, in the next couple of weeks here, that Space Marines are going to lose their wound rerolls on Oath of Moment and how I'm going to make adjustments. Actually, a lot of this list will stay the same, but there are 1 or 2 units that I will probably swap out and put some different things in there. But a lot of it doesn't rely on Oath of Moment that much. So, or at least the wound rerolls of Oath of Moment that much. And then the third thing I'm going to do after I go through my list, then talk about what's going to change, I'm also going to go through the actual tournament. I'm going to spend 3-4 minutes talking through my tournament games. They are kind of interesting because I went into a variety of opponents. I battled a horde with over 130 models. I battled an army that had only 9 models. So I went against a variety of opponents. I'm just going to tell you how this list did against them. So stay tuned for that. So first, let's get into the list, see how the DeathWatch are doing. The game we are playing today does still include Oath of Moment, allowing me to reroll wound rolls in addition to the hit rolls. Next week, we'll probably drop that out. I'm thinking that next week, I'm going to try the Iron Hands, the Iron Spear, no, the Iron Storm Spearhead. Yeah, whatever was supposed to be the Iron Hands new Space Marine detachment that has a lot of vehicle buffs to it, Tech Marine buffs to it. I think it's called the Irony. I don't remember, guys. It's Iron Hands. I'm going to try that with a bunch of vehicles next week, and we'll of course be trying that with the new enhancements, the new stratagems, and the fact that Oath of Moment does not have the wound rerolls anymore. So here's the DeathWatch list, guys. Like I said, got some new stuff in here. Indomitor kill teams, some Gladiator Lancers. So here it is. So DeathWatch, not doing Gladius. I did try Gladius, not on the channel, but I did try Gladius just to see what I could do with that Bolter Discipline thing. And I liked it, but I totally missed my Teleportarium strap. So we're still DeathWatch Black Spear Task Force. I have a few things in this list that aren't perfectly WYSIWYG. You'll have to forgive me. GW keeps changing things and nerfing things and adjusting things and moving things around, so I haven't quite caught up on a couple models. The Gladiator Lancers are mostly painted, but not quite done yet. Now, as for characters, we actually have 4 characters today. Of course, we got the Calidus Assassin. Even though her increase in the cost of the opponent's stratagems has gone to only battle tactics, she's still real strong. She's still real good. Her movement shenanigans and the fact that she is a lone operative make her strong for scoring. And I found that a lot of times, if you just increase the CP cost of your opponent's CP reroll strat, it really affects them pretty severely. And I've been a couple times this past weekend with my opponents chose to spend 2 CP on a CP reroll, and it still failed. So we still got the Calidus. We have a Gravis Captain. This Gravis Captain, he is actually going to have the Mastercrafted Bolt Rifle and his relic weapon, his relic sword. The Mastercrafted Bolt Rifle is hiding under his cloak. He has the enhancement, the Tome of Ectoclades. This is the DeathWatch one that gives basically once per game, I can choose 2 Oath of Moment stratagems, or 2 Oath of Moment targets in my command phase, and they'll both be active for until my next command phase. Then we have 2 Apothecary Biologi. One of these is a Primaris model, but I'm using them both as Biologists, so both for Gravis units, because that's the only units I have on the table today are Gravis. No enhancements on either of them. Now, when it comes to my kind of core part of my unit. I've got 2 Indomitor kill teams. I don't think I've run these on the channel yet. I've practiced them a little bit here. I know if you've been watching my DeathWatch games on the channel, you know I've asked you guys what do you think of the other kill teams. Now that they took away the stratagems or nerfed the stratagems, so they only affect bolter weapons, I've switched up to the Indomitor. And after playing around with it, I didn't realize you can put a couple heavy bolters in here because of the heavy intercessors. And I've just decided to go with it. And I tried it with one. I liked it so much, I built 2 of them. I have the models for it. So we have 2 Indomitor kill teams. Again, not perfectly WYSIWYG here. I don't have the heavy bolter models yet. So basically, in the one squad, the 2 guys with no helmets are the heavy bolters. The other squad, the 2 guys with red shoulder pads, we have a Blood Angel and then some kind of red claw on one of the shoulder pads. Those will be the 2 that have the heavy bolters. But the overall build of the Indomitor kill teams is that we start with 5 heavy intercessors, and then you can add up to 2 Inceptors, 2 Aggressors, or 2 Eradicators. Now, in both of these squads, they're exactly the same. I have 2 Bolter Inceptors, I have 2 Bolter Aggressors, and then 1 Eradicator. And then 1 Eradicator in the squad can have a multi-melta, so he has a multi-melta. And then, like I said, we've got the 5 heavy intercessors, 2 of which are equipped with heavy bolters. So once you put all that together, it's quite a lot of bolter firepower. And the Indomitor team's special rules are, anytime they target a unit that is below full strength, so below full strength, they get +1 to hit. And anytime they target a unit that is below half strength, they get +1 to wound. This can be extremely powerful in the vehicles when all those bolters start wounding on 5s. And while we still have oath of moment rerolls, they can be quite strong. Wounding on 5s when they're going into a tough vehicle. Of course, they always +1 to wound when there are a lot of strength 5 guns in here. Going into infantry is always really strong as well. But essentially what happens here is that I get a lot of shots. The Bolter Inceptors each get 3 shots, but they are sustained hits 2. And each of these squads is going to have an apothecary with them, the biologist, so they'll be getting lethal hits all the time too. And then the Bolter Inceptors are twin linked as well. So even once Oath of Moment goes away, they'll still be re-rolling their wounds. Same thing with the Bolt Storm Gauntlets on the Aggressors. They are still twin linked, so they will still re-roll wounds. So there's actually some re-roll wound ability in this unit still. But what I found this past weekend is that these units can kill just about anything. I use them to kill Imperial Knights, not just baby knights, but I killed a Castellan with them, and I killed a whole bunch of Tyranid Swarm with them because they've got I'm going to put a Biologist Apothecary with each of them, so they always have lethal hits. If they're re-rolling their hits into a hard target, like if I'm going after something like an Imperial Knight or a tank of some sort, a big demon that's very high toughness, I will just have lethal hits. I'll choose that as my Oath of Moment target, so I'll be re-rolling all those hits. Some of the weapons in here, like the heavy bolters and the assault bolters, have sustained on them, so I might get some extra hits with those re-rolls. And then when I roll to wound, I'm going to be looking for. So it's just basically I pick up all the dice, 6s on the wound or the hit re-rolls, and then 6s again on the wound, and 6s again on the wound re-rolls. Just that many rolls with this many dice means that I do get a lot of wounds, even against targets that are much higher toughness than the strength of my guns, even if I'm looking for 6s to wound. And most of the bolters in this unit, even the bolt rifles on the heavy intercessors, start off as AP1. With a stratagem, both kill teams can go up to AP2 and increase their range by 6 inches. And with a Hail Strike Speeder here, I can tag a unit and get them up to AP3, meaning they can put work into just about anything. And of course, if I'm going into light infantry, I can use the stratagem that gives them, makes all their bolters anti-infantry 2-up. So even when I'm going after something like Lich Guard that are toughness 5 and -1 to wound, still wounding them on 2s. Pouring that fire in there. So hopefully you'll get a chance to see how they work today. I'll bring those out and hopefully see both into infantry and vehicles how strong they are. And again, of course, because they're 2 kill teams, the Teleportarium strat is super powerful. 1 CP, I can pick them up at the end of my opponent's turn and deep strike them in my turn. So in addition to that, we got 2 squads of Plasma Inceptors. By this point, I'm sure most people know Plasma Inceptors are super strong. They can deep strike just 3 inches away. They are twin linked as well, so they will still get to re-roll wounds even without the Oath of Moment wound rerolls, because it's natively built into their profile. And hopefully I don't blow up too many today. Next, we've got 2 Gladiator Lancers. I think this is the first time I've used these on the channel. I know people have been using these for a while now. I know they've been great. Points went up a few, but I actually think that now that we're losing the wound rerolls on Oath of Moment, the fact that they have a built-in wound reroll, you get to reroll 1 wound for free, 1 hit, 1 wound, and 1 damage roll. It actually gives them some ability to actually target things that don't have Oath of Moment. They get some extra consistency, even if it's not the Oath of Moment target. Next, we got the Hail Strike Speeder. Hail Strike Speeders, in case you don't know, Speeders can deep strike this edition. And then this one has a bunch of little piddly guns that can shoot, a Gatling cannon, some stubbers, some frag grenade launchers. But the big deal is after it shoots, you pick one of its targets that was hit, and the rest of the army gets extra AP into that target for the rest of the phase. So very useful there. It also has a 14-inch move, so sometimes it scooches around, gets on primaries, scores secondaries, that sort of thing. Then finally, not 1, not 2, but 3 Whirlwinds. With 10th edition terrain, and it really, if you've been playing on 9th edition style terrain, a lot of times you still have good firing lanes. But if you're playing on 10th edition terrain, it can be very difficult sometimes to get those lines of sight to actually shoot things. That's why the Teleportarium strat is so powerful with DeathWatch. That's why deep striking plasma inceptors are strong. That's why the long range on the Gladiators is great, because as long as they can see something, the big guns, the laser destroyers, have a 72-inch range. And the Whirlwinds, of course, have a 72-inch range and are indirect fire. Now, this is the one thing in my list that might be changing a little bit as we lose the wound rerolls in Oath of Moment. These guys, the Whirlwinds, are great into infantry because they are getting D6 plus 3 shots, blast, again, indirect fire, 72-inch range, so you can tag anything on the board. D6 plus 3 shots, blast. They are strength 8, AP 2 damage. Do great work into infantry. And right now, when we can reroll wounds in Oath of Moment, they still do good work into vehicles. At strength 8, most of the time they're going to be wounding tougher vehicles on 5s, which can be kind of a downside to them, make them less powerful into vehicles. But with Oath of Moment rerolls, they can still do good work into hard targets. As we lose that, I may be looking at switching out some of these Whirlwinds for some other options, because they're not going to get wound rolls into hard targets. They're still good into infantry and that sort of thing. But all right, that is the list. So let's talk a little bit about what I plan to change. So now that we know Oath of Moment is losing the wound rerolls, there's 2 things really in this list I'm looking at changing. First of all, the Indomitor kill team is still going to be really strong. A couple weapons in there are still twin linked. The Inceptors and the Aggressor's Boltstorm Gauntlets are twin linked, so they're still going to reroll wounds anyways. And when I'm going into hard targets with them, things like vehicles and monsters, I'm counting on the lethal hits that they're given by the biologists, apothecaries on there. So it's more looking for 6s to hit, re-rolling all my hits, looking for more 6s. Then when I re-roll the wound roll, I'm looking for 6s there as well. And some of them, like I said, some of them are twin links, so some will still re-roll their wounds. We're not losing that many opportunities to roll the wound rolls. And when they're going into infantry, I'll just choose the anti-infantry 2-up, which I'm just looking for 2s on the dice. So I'll get some 1s, miss a few. Again, some of them are still twin links, so I'll still be able to roll a couple of those ones. But when we're just looking for 2s on the dice, it's pretty easy, and we don't need the rerolls quite as much. Again, it is a little bit of a downgrade in power, but I think there's still a lot of oomph in the Indomitor kill teams. Plasma Inceptors, like I said, still great. They're twin linked, so they're going to reroll wounds anyways, no matter what you're shooting at. The Gladiator Lancers. The Lancers are good because they can reroll 1 hit, 1 wound, and 1 damage roll, meaning they've got always going to have a wound roll in there somewhere. Especially when you've got just 2 big shots, sometimes just 1 wound roll is all you need. I definitely found this past weekend that oftentimes they were going into targets that were not my Oath of Moment targets. I would put the Indomitor kill teams in the Oath of Moment targets, and then put the Lancers somewhere else because their natural inbuilt rerolls gave them the ability to deal with that without the Oath of Moment rerolls. Then the Hail Strike, still great. Still looking to get that extra AP whenever the Indomitor kill teams are shooting. The 2 things that I'm looking to swap out here are the Whirlwinds. As I mentioned just a minute ago, now they're still going to be good into infantry, They're strength 8, so they're going to be wounding T4 stuff on 2, T5 stuff on 3s. Still got a lot of power into infantry. However, they're less good into hard targets, your vehicles and monsters, especially anything that's higher toughness than 8, which is most of your vehicles and monsters. So I may be looking at swapping out. 3 of them is a lot. Don't think 3 are going to make it in the list. I'm looking at maybe an Eradicator squad at some point, a full just 6-man Eradicator squad, because I can, with an enhancement for DeathWatch, give them deep strike and just make them more tactical and more able to get eyes on their targets. The other thing I'm looking at swapping out is actually the captain. Now, I don't know if GW intends to change the point cost of the Tome of Ectoclades enhancement, but as it is right now, the captain, I'm really just taking him because the Tome of Ectoclades enhancement can only go on a captain or a watchmaster. It can't go on other characters. So I might drop the captain if the Tome of Ectoclades is still 40 points and you only get the extra hit rerolls on it. You don't get the wound rolls. I might consider keeping it if they make it a little bit cheaper, being that the Oath of Moment no longer rerolls wounds. We'll see what GW decides to do there, but I might try it without the captain, without the Tome of Ectoclades enhancement. DeathWatch players, let me know what you're thinking about doing here in the future. I'm thinking about throwing some 6-man Eradicator brick in there, a 3rd Biologist, because he's the cheapest character, and I can put the Beacon and Jealous on him so I can deep strike those Eradicators and make sure they get eyes on the target. I'm thinking about adding the Thunderstrike speeder that will go along with those Eradicators. So the Thunderstrike and the Eradicator's deep strike. Thunderstrike hits a target. That speeder, after it hits a target that's either a vehicle or monster, the rest of your army gets +1 to wound. A lot of times the Eradicators are wounding tough targets on 5s, even though they get the free rerolls against vehicles and monsters. If we make it so they're wounding them on 4s, that's going to become a lot more efficient. So those are things I'm thinking about throwing into the list. Let me know what you guys are planning to change in your DeathWatch lists as we get some changes for the Space Marine Codex. We know really none of the data sheets are changing for the most part. A few of them are a little bit, but we know not a lot of that's changing. So interested to see how you want to adjust things with the changes to Oath of Moment. Finally, I wanted to go briefly through how I did at the tournament this past weekend. Again, at North Coast Games in Willoughby, Ohio. Jason ran a great event. We had 15 people show up. 2 of us went undefeated. Friend of the channel, Josh, did really well. He went 300, 3 100-point games. Nothing I can do about that. I did manage to go undefeated as well. He got first. I got second. Congrats, Josh. So the list I was running was this very list that I'm bringing today. So this is what went 3-0 this past weekend. My first game was actually into Tyranids, and it was over 130 models. This gentleman brought 80 gargoyles, all of them painted. I'm just a fan of the gargoyles. I don't know. 80 gargoyles, 30 Gene Stealers, 18 of the Von Ryan's Leapers, a few characters, a Biovore, that kind of thing. I was so sad. It was my first tournament, bringing the Gladiator Lancers, and I had no targets in my first game. No good targets for those Lancers. Throughout that game, those friggin' laser destroyers were just shooting at gargoyles. It was so funny. I wanted to make sure my Indomitor kill teams did not get tied up because of all his forward deploying shenanigans. And I forget which detachment he was running. I think it was the Vanguard one. Basically, I hid my Whirlwinds and my Indomitor kill teams in the very back corner, and I used the Gladiator Lancers as screens because they're vehicles they can still shoot into combat, so they don't really lose that much efficiency. And I was just worried about the Indomitors getting tied up and not able to do their work. So throughout that game, I was able to kill 130 models. At the end of the game, he only had 1 character left. I forget the score. It was a strong win. But it was a lot of fun. It took him a while to move those models around, so I was glad I was able to pick them up pretty quickly. And then after facing 130 some Tyranids, I played an Imperial Knight player. He had 9 models on the table. He had a Castellan, another, not a Crusader, another big knight, a Warden. And then he had 6 of the little ones, 1 Helvrin, and 5 Armiger Warglaves. And then he had 1 Vindicare Assassin. And I was able to table him as well. So just proving that the Indomitor kill teams work pretty good into hordes and pretty good into hard targets. And the Indomitors are what did all the work into killing the 2 big knights, the Castellan and the other one. I think it was a Crusader. No, not a Crusader. I think it was a Warden. Yeah, I use the teleportarian strat, pick them up, drop them down. The biologist in each of those units getting lethal hits, oath a moment target, re-rolling all the hits, getting those sixes on the hits, getting sustained hits, re-rolling the wounds, getting sixes on the wounds. It was enough to chip through and get the work done. And then the gladiator lancers would pick up a stray baby knight because he had put the rotate ion shields on the big one. Is much easier for the lancers to actually pick up some of the small knights off the table. So was able to table my opponent there. And then the third game was actually against Admech. He had also gone 2-0 up at that point, and it was a very well played Admech list, beautifully painted. Great looking army, Eric, and it was an extremely close game. I managed to pull it off by 2 points, 72-70. Oh, it was crazy. At one point, I made the mistake of deep striking one of my Indomitor kill teams. I brought him in with Teleportarian and dropped him right in front of a big group of the the breachers. Those guys can hit really hard. He had the extra AP because I was in my deployment zone. So each one of them on Overwatch got 4 shots because I was in rapid fire, full rerolls because they were near a Scutari unit. They had both lethal hits and sustained hits. He picked up the entire Indomitor kill team because they're flat 3 damage and they're up at AP 3. He picked up the entire Indomitor kill team in one Overwatch round of shooting. Yeah, even though he's only hitting on 6s, it was crazy. So I still managed to pull off the win there, but it was a great game. Congrats to Eric. Well played, well painted army, and that was the tournament. All right, that's it, guys. So I'm jumping over to the battle report here. I'm going to play against DJ. We're going to see how I do against whatever crazy Necron stuff he's decided to bring today. Follow me over there, and let's see how it goes.